Hi there, this is Helen Tarrant again from Uplift. Here with our whole team. Wow, it's massive. Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and today I'm going to talk about building a portfolio in an interest rate rise market. What does that look like? It's a new frontier, right? And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because it's really important that you don't become stagnant, that you do not stop and sit on the sidelines and watch what happens. Because every month, every minute, every week that you are watching the world go by, the interest rate rises, your equity, your money is going down and you're losing your wealth. Don't lose your wealth by staying still. Move forward to protect your wealth and to increase your wealth. So let me explain how that happens. Firstly, if you have any kind of residential property, as the interest rate rises, your property pretty much goes down in price, in the value. It's always been like that. It's always been historically tied into interest rate rises. As we get to low interest rate environment, the value goes up. As we go to high interest rate environment, the value goes down. Now, if you have multiple investment properties added onto your principal home, they are all going to go down in value. But also on top of that, they're also the repayments and holding onto the property is going to be more expensive. Then you add on, if you wanted to do, typically this is when you would go out and try to implement a residential strategy of trying to do a uplift residential, which means that a manufactured equity, which means that you would buy an old property, renovate it, and then either get the value again or flip it, or build granny flats and extensions, etc. Now, rising building costs, rising labor costs affects that. All of a sudden, if you buy a $500,000 house, you try to do a $30,000 reno, becomes a $40,000 reno, and with the interest rate going up, diminishing value, instead of that property now being worth $600,000, it's now only worth $550,000, which means there's no real point for you to do it. So most people go, well, why bother? Let's sit on the sidelines. Well, that's a bad decision. And the natural flow-on effect of what happens when interest rate rises and people cannot afford the repayment is that they start to sell. They start to sell their residential property, and then what we create is a landslide effect where a lot of people are selling and the value continues to drop, right? And we just create a disaster. This happens during a GFC and a recession. And we've seen it again. We've seen it before in the last, through the Asia crisis, the GFC, and it's happened, 10, 20 years ago. And, it happens, once in a blip, right? And now we're facing potentially something like that. So how can you move forward and protect your portfolio? Now, commercial property is the natural flow on for that. And it's not because my specialty is commercial property, and it's not because that I'm tooting my own horn. This is not about that. It is actually about what you need to do to protect your investment, especially your residential and your wealth, right? Because you spent potentially 7, 10, 12, 15, 20 years building up a portfolio. Now, in the next 12 to 24 months, you could see the cream of that portfolio, 20%, 30% wiped out of that portfolio, which means that on $1 million property, that is anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000. Which means that your equity could be diminished and totally wiped out. Now, that is a scary, scary thought. And if you sit there and hold that time bomb and then wait for it to fall off the cliff as the interest rate goes up, then you're an idiot. Then you shouldn't be doing that. What you need to do is come up with strategies to be able to combat that. And when we go to a cash crunch and we go to a recession, cash flow is king. Nothing beats cash flow. So that's why you need to then create a commercial strategy to protect your residential. So you need to develop the commercial strategy to protect your residential. Your residential is not a cash flow game, it is a capital growth game. So residential is a capital growth game, so you've got to hold it. But in order to hold it, you need cash flow. So you've got to get into commercial, and you've got to get commercial to be able to hold the cash flow in enough so that you can protect your resi and your wealth, essentially. So the way to do that is to get You can buy and hold commercial properties, but the best solution is to actually buy, manufacture equity, so buy, uplift, and hold. Because when you buy, create, uplift, and hold, you actually get ahead of the market. If you buy and hold a set and forget property that is perfect, right now the latest industrial property in Brisbane is 5%, right? And when your interest rate is going to go to 4 by the end of the year, you're clearing 1% margin. That's not going to give you a lot of hold. That's 10 grand on $1 million that potentially could save your resi, but only one resi, and that's only a little bit, right? What you need to do is buy a property, say at the same $1 million, maybe with low income of 30,000-40,000 to start with, and then engineer it to 60,000-70,000, where you're clearing a good $20,000 to $30,000 buffer, where it can really support your residential property. That is the buy, uplift, and hold strategy. And what that hold is, the hold is to protect your wealth and the rest of your portfolio by bringing enough cash flow. And that property strategy in commercial is held purely to save the rest of your portfolio. And this way, you protect your wealth. Once this wave goes up and down and interest rate equalizes and starts to go down again, or just equalizes, and everything clicks back in this economy, you have not only your residential asset that is protected, but you also then have a commercial asset that both has cash flow and will get the capital gains as well. So you win-win on all of this. But if you don't, and you purely sit out and you're too afraid to move, which was a lot of people do because they're worried about what happens to the economy, what happens to themselves, and they're consumed by fear, they don't move. What happens is that they basically follow the market over a cliff and they see their wealth wiped out. But if you can be proactive and build your portfolio now in a different direction. So you've got to pivot, right? Got to pivot and build in a different direction where you are not only looking for the perfect de-risk property where it's set and forget with, a 1 to 2% margin because there's still so much demand in the market. You are going into a buy, uplift, and hold pattern where the whole purpose of the commercial property is to service your residential debt and hold out your residential debt and protect your wealth, then you're actually positioning yourself and securing yourself ahead of the market. And you got to do that quick. So there's no time to lose. If this is a strategy you want, you need to contact us, Helen at commercialpropertycashflow.com.au, helentarrant.com. Jump there, send us a message, jump in the strategy call, and let's get started. We'll put in the strategy for you. We'll show you the metrics and the levers you need to pull for a property that is a buy, hold, uplift, and hold. And that hold and the cash flow and how that's going, what kind of cash flow you need to support your resi portfolio. Let's do the metrics so that you can actually protect your wealth. So this is how you build your portfolio in an interest rate rise environment, is that you start manufacturing higher and higher equity. You buying properties that has a higher cash flow. So that may be a property that you know that the rent is inflated, but maybe for the next 2 or 3 years because you need the additional cash flow. It may be a property that you know that is under rented and that you could add in some different tenancies to increase the rent. It may be a property that may have an extension you can do at the back if you need to, but also, or a property you can add an ATM or other lettable areas, build mezzanine floors, anything you can do to increase the return, or a property that you need to swap out a tenant and put a new tenant in there to increase the value of that property, or more importantly, the cash flow of that property. So this is the new strategy moving forward. If this is important to you and you want someone to help you through it, handhold you, build that with you, be part of your team, work with you in partnership moving forward, then reach out to us, helentarrant.com, Helen at commercialpropertycashflow.com.au. And in the meantime, hit the bell, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.